Chapter 5 The Rites of Ascension. Cassia originally intended to spend 5 to 10 minutes at most analyzing the tome and familiarizing herself with their upcoming ceremony. It wasn't long, however, before she realized how foolish that intention was. Gendal's theories went far beyond what she'd learned in school, and she had to accept it'd be a grievous mistake to rush into anything so complex and dangerous. So she changed the plan, telling the others to get some rest while she worked the calculations. She convinced herself the delay would be worth it, as everyone would need to be alert and ready. A few minutes became an hour, and she was surprised when her sleepiness never came. If anything, her mind was so engaged with the father she'd barely known, she felt more awake now than she'd been on the road. After a certain point, however, she forced herself to stop. It wasn't just the realization she'd never understand it fully, not without additional texts or consulting the ghost of Gendal himself. She hadn't forgotten that time was ticking away. They were lucky the creatures weren't back already. Perhaps they'd been distracted by other prey? Or they were busy sleeping off their recent feast.
"Hey, Roke?"
she whispered. He'd been lying down all this time, but his eyes were open and turned to meet hers.
"I hate to ask you this, but would you mind staying up here?"
She expected an argument. For him to insist he felt fine and wanted to help. So it surprised her when he nodded, as though he'd expected this all along.
"It has nothing to do with your injuries,"
she said, explaining her reasons anyway.
"In part, it has to do with the ceremony itself. We, women, will require some privacy. But there's more to it than that."
Roke had already guessed where this was going.
"You want me to stand guard, in case Velt returns?"
Him, or anything else.
The young man seemed torn, his curiosity perhaps piqued by her mention of privacy. But eventually he nodded.
"Do you think you'll hear me if I yell a warning down the tunnel?"
"Hopefully,"
she responded.
"We don't know how far down this goes, but we'll keep our ears open."
"I'll do the same."
"Thanks."
She felt better having someone watch the entrance. While it meant she'd have fewer hands to work with, it would be easier to concentrate and not worry about potential interruptions. She then awoke the girls and prepared for their descent into the catacombs. Unable to create a lasting torch, as their lantern oil was still back at the wagon and buried beneath tons of earth, they did the next best thing. They took the choicest pieces from their campfire, the ones least likely to fall apart, and as much additional wood as the girls could carry. It was the best she could come up with, knowing they'd need multiple fires to see through the ritual. Even so, the flickering orange flames made for an eerie sight as they descended the steps, twisting and curving deep into the heart of the mountain. To their astonishment, the catacombs went deeper than anyone expected, having been incorporated into a pre-existing system of caverns. Rock formations dripped from the ceiling like melted topaz candles, casting jagged shadows that danced and wavered. But there were no bones, not within close proximity to the monastery. No, the bones didn't appear until later. And when they did, they caused even Marion to freeze momentarily in her tracks. The path opened to a cave so wide there were gaping stretches their torchlight didn't penetrate. The ground they could see, however, was covered in bones. Not in tall stacks as was the custom in the city, but spread out so the bones of one corpse wouldn't mingle with another.
I don't like this.
Whined Chisandral.
There are so many.
Exclaimed Illyriel, with a tone closer to wonder than fear.
How is this possible for such a small village?
Cassia, however, wasn't surprised by the number. Rather, she took an interest in the trinkets adorning them. In the city, it was unusual to find decorations or inscriptions, as the caretakers were in a constant battle with limited space. But here, it had been possible for the dead to be honored by their loved ones in a way that made Cassia feel jealous. She would have loved her father to be buried in such a place. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong.
The trinkets,
She realized, unlooted after all these years, despite the precious stones and gold they contained.
What's that?
Asked Chisandral, pointing to an unnatural rock formation.
Some kind of ruin?
Suggested Marion, looking around and finding similar worn blocks hidden throughout the chamber.
They must have already been here, long before Hebrel was settled.
How can you be sure?
Use your eyes. The village can't be older than a few hundred years, built before the mountains were lost to the current. By the architecture, the Hebrelians must have come from the south, among those who made pilgrimage to draw near the gods and build their home on Amen's footstep.
Small good that did.
Said Illyriel.
The gods were already dead. Their city vanished.
Even so.
At this point, the path split into multiple directions, spreading out to take advantage of the network of caves. Cassia had no choice but to stop and consider which way to go. She'd always found it easy to find the center of a crypt, back in the cities where it was all man-made. In this place, however, the layout was less clear. She made her best guess, which, in the end, turned out to be correct. But it still required them to walk over 15 minutes, descending through chamber after chamber, filled with bones. As the path continued deeper underground, it curved back around, returning to an area directly beneath the monastery. Here, they encountered the largest cavern yet, so enormous and vast, their light didn't reach the opposite side. Their destination, however, was easy to spot. A rock formation rising from the center. The top was flat, like a natural plateau, perhaps 10 feet higher than the rest of the ground. It gave the impression of an island engulfed by a sea of corpses. As they closed the remaining distance, they saw the large stone statues erected upon its surface, without a single god missing. Their construction was as ancient as the ruins they'd found, but the Hebrillians had taken care to restore their appearance. The reconstructed gods had been left in a circle around a wide open space meant for public observance, or similar gatherings of religious nature. Near the base of the plateau, the skeletal remains came to an end. This wasn't only to keep the ramp unobstructed. Next to that ramp was a shallow pool of water, threatening to accelerate the rot of bones.
I'm impressed,
said Cassia when they reached the top.
I wonder if the settlers knew this was here, or if they just got lucky.
Marion shrugged. Cassia stepped into the circle, surrounded by stone gods, each over 8 feet tall. She stopped to brush her fingers along an iron sconce and found it one of several spread at intervals around the platform. Each was comprised of a small metal cradle atop an iron pole.
Let's get some light,
said Cassia.
Illyriel, why not start with this one and do a few more around the room? 4 should suffice, and leave enough wood to keep them going.
It wasn't long, however, before Marion discovered a store of firewood left by the caretakers.
Why not light them all?
She suggested. Illyriel was hesitant.
That wood must be ancient.
It'll burn,
said the lady in a confident tone.
Better than anything you're used to, dried out like this. Chess, give her a hand, won't you?
Is that a storeroom?
Asked Cassia, approaching what had appeared to be a depression in the floor, only to find a framed entrance. A small, barred window was built into the door.
I'll check it out,
said Marion.
Maybe there's something we can use.
Cassia nodded, thoroughly pleased by these recent developments. It was undoubtedly better than drawing a circle on moistened wood, or dealing with the disrepair they'd seen above. All her worries, it seemed, had been for nothing. She could nearly sense the raw power exuding from the cavern's design. It reminded her of the feelings from her own ceremony, only stronger somehow. The light from Marion's fire disappeared behind the door, which hadn't been locked. Cassia walked into the circle and tried to visualize everything that needed to be done. As both Marion and Chisandril were the ritual subjects, she hadn't yet decided which tasks to perform herself and which to entrust to her sister. Almost instinctively, her eyes went to Shaelus, standing at the head of the pantheon, orange in the firelight. The god of Stratum, however, provided no answers. Nor did Ashira, the sleek goddess of ordination, standing by his side. With these two as a reference, Cassia quickly identified the position of Talarian, the god of conviction, behind her and to the right. As her own sworn god, and Marion's, it was there at his feet where Cassia would draw their circles.
What about him?
Asked Illyriel, pausing before a god on the left. The statue appeared younger than many of the others, with a sharp beard and a smug expression.
I thought I knew them all, but I don't recognize this one.
That's Vashik,
said Chisandril. Illyriel shook her head and pointed to the side.
Vashik's over there.
The younger girl was confused. She began to turn, making a count of the statues. Cassia narrowed her brows, having identified the problem.
This place must be older than any of us thought.
What do you mean?
Asked her sister. Cassandra completed her count.
9 gods? But there should only be 8.
This
Said Cassia, raising a hand toward the statue.
has to be Aviathus.
She stepped closer to get a better look.
This is the first time, however, I've seen his face.
Aviathus?
Repeated Illyriel.
Why haven't I heard of him?
You have,
Said Cassia.
though maybe not by name. It goes back to before the abyssal threat, before anyone feared invisible monsters or a dying world. Back then, while the gods yet lived, there'd been a 9th aspect, home to thousands upon thousands of people, just like ours. You remember now?
Are they the ones who died first?
Cassia nodded.
I'm confused.
Said Cassandra.
I thought it was Ashira's aspect, ordination, that vanished.
That happened too.
Illyriel explained.
Hers and Shayla's, but only at the end. This other one was gone long before the city of Amun disappeared, and Ashira betrayed.
Cassia stopped her with a hand, not wanting to have this argument again. Cassandra, however, was still at a loss.
No one's sure how it happened.
Said Cassia.
The people of innovation were alive one moment, and then something ripped them apart.
You mean, like the abyssal creatures?
In a way, but different. You see, no one else could do anything about it. They couldn't see what was happening or fight off the attackers. If there were monsters, they could walk through anyone not bonded to Aviathus. You could have used your own body to shield them from danger, but they'd still be torn to shreds, wrapped within your arms.
Cassandra's expression grew horrified, and just as suddenly became thoughtful.
I heard something about this. Only I thought it was a story. I mean, stuff like that doesn't happen anymore, right? Killings inside the city? Inside the safe areas?
You're right. And I know what you mean. It's not the sort of story you'd want to believe. Some think it was an act of justice, as punishment for something Aviathus did. Some people think it was a warning to prepare us for the threat yet to come. Eventually, Shayla removed him from the Pantheon, as if by forgetting the problem, it wouldn't happen again.
They stood there, saying nothing. It was easy to wish Shayla had done things differently, that, with all his power, he'd found a way to stop the world from ending. But wishing only led to further disappointment.
There's not much down there,
Said Marion, emerging from the storeroom. From his shoulder, she let a coil of rope drop to the floor.
Tools for masonry and climbing.
Cassia frowned. There were areas in the cave where the rope might be helpful. For the moment, however, she couldn't think of anything that needed tying up.
I also found this.
Marion handed her an old clay jug.
There's quite a number of these. What do you suppose they are?
Cassia removed the stopper and took a careful whiff.
Embalming fluid,
she said flatly, returning it to Marion. The lady groaned in disappointment, perhaps having hoped it'd be flammable or help in some other way.
We need to get started,
said Cassia.
I'll need those diagrams again. I assume you brought chalk.
Marion rummaged through her bag before handing Cassia a sizable chunk. Large enough, running out wouldn't be a concern.
We'll need the bones ready,
continued Cassia.
And a rock to grind them.
Marion blanched at the thought of destroying something so valuable.
Don't worry,
said Cassia.
We won't do it now. That part is reserved for the end. Only after success becomes a certainty.
Marion nodded in understanding. After all, were it not for this detail, the bones wouldn't have survived past Cassia's ceremony. They'd have been wasted for nothing.
I'll need some time for this,
said Cassia, opening the book to the right page.
The two of you should start preparing yourselves.
Chisandral looked at her mother.
What does she mean?
Come on,
said Marion.
Remember the pool down below?
We need to wash?
Marion nodded.
We'll take turns holding the light.
The girl grumbled something about freezing again.
Remember,
continued Cassia before they left,
you'll need to remove everything made from metal. Don't forget hairpins. You can't wear leather or skin, anything from another living creature. Only simple fabrics, plant fiber or cotton. Understand?
It was only then that Cassia realized the girl's dress was silk. It wasn't a direct violation, strictly speaking, but it wasn't worth the risk. She didn't understand what silk was made of, but it might interfere with the girl's life signature.
What are you wearing under that? Don't tell me it's all silk.
I'll go with them,
offered Illyrio.
My slip's cotton. We can switch.
Cassia nodded and motioned them to hurry. For the next half hour, Cassia labored over the chalk design. While she wasn't exactly an artist, she had practiced drawing circles over 15 feet across as part of her training. The result wasn't perfect, considering her haste, but close enough to meet their needs. In the end, it wasn't the chalk that possessed any power. In the same way, there was nothing special about the floor or the statues of the gods themselves. What mattered was the meaning behind each component, that each statue could be identified and each symbol easily read. As long as the meaning remained unambiguous, her artistry didn't matter. It wasn't the details that drew the gods' attention, but intent. The women were ready before Cassia was finished, and they waited outside the circle for further instruction. This, too, was a good thing, as it wasn't just the body that needed purging from outside influences. The mind benefited from cleansing as well. As Cassia finished the final mark, she looked up at her audience. Chisandral's arms were clutched tightly across her chest, trying to keep warm. Her white, sleeveless slip was too large for her frame, and her hair, usually wavy, hung straight down her back. Her feet were bare, with her left big toe pawing absent-mindedly at the stone beneath her. Cassia motioned the girl forward.
I'm going to need you right here. Watch your step, and don't smudge the lines.
Where should I leave the box?
Asked Marion. She, too, was barefoot, wearing a light, faded shift.
On the floor is fine. You'll be over here, Marion. And Elle, why don't you come around the outside? I'll need you to watch this closely.
What should I focus on?
Cassia realized she should slow down, so everyone was on the same page.
Listen up. All these symbols need to remain intact. I'll need your help with this, Elle. Keep an eye on their feet. If anyone missteps and smears a line, you'll have to redraw it exactly as it was. Got it?
Illyriel looked uncertain.
I can enter the circle then?
Only if necessary. Get out quickly, and it shouldn't pose a problem.
The girl nodded.
Okay. The chalk's the easy part. The rest's not so simple.
Cassia then drew a knife from her waist. Without needing to be asked, Marion proffered her left arm. Taking care to avoid veins and tendons, Cassia made a small incision along the woman's forearm. She stepped closer and painted a symbol in blood across Marion's forehead. As she did so, she recited from memory the accompanying invocation.
Beneath the eyes of the gods, I mark thee for service. Thy head that thou might receive understanding, and thine ears to be opened to the voice of the 9 realms.
At this, Cassia dabbed each earlobe with blood. Marion looked confused.
Nothing's happening.
It's not supposed to,
said Cassia, under her breath.
Not yet. Turn around.
With more blood from her arm, Cassia traced a larger design across Marion's back and her exposed shoulders. It was reminiscent of a story depicting a man grieving over his loved ones. The man was Talarian.
Watch close, Elle. These lines smudge more easily.
Her sister's face went white, uneager to paint with blood. In a louder voice, Cassia proceeded with the ceremony.
Marion T. Oleska, marked for service, daughter of Rickon and Corintha, wilt thou heed the call of thine professed deity? Wilt thou swear thyself loyal to be born anew as a daughter of Talarian? Speak now with thine own voice. Swear it.
Marion's head turned slightly. Under her breath, Cassia added,
Say, I swear.
The woman nodded hastily.
I swear.
Close your eyes.
As Marion did so, Cassia produced a cloth blindfold she'd cut earlier from Illyriel's sash. She tied it carefully so as not to disturb the blood on Marion's face. Cassia turned and walked toward Chisandrel. She then repeated a similar incantation. In this case, the girl wasn't marked for service, but devotion. Moments later, the girl was given a blindfold as well.
Okay, Elle. Stand here with Jess. Don't do anything unless I tell you. For the next bit, my entire focus will be on Marion.
Cassia proceeded into the more complex invocations. This part was more tedious, as she was required to move Marion to another part of the circle where she was marked for purity, and another where she was marked for discipline. Through all this, nothing unusual was expected to happen. Most of these words were for Marion's benefit. They primed her mind, like readying a pump so water could flow. From time to time, Cassia would turn to her sister and provide her with words to repeat for Chisandral. In actuality, there were only a few passages Cassia couldn't recall verbatim. But even as she blundered through the words, she wasn't dissatisfied with the result. They conveyed the impression of correctness, though they were not the ones from her own ceremony. Half an hour later, she felt the signs of the circle responding. The surrounding air felt lighter, as though losing a part of its substance. Cassia heard her voice as though through a trance, and she could almost feel reality waiting to be rewritten. And then, something even stranger occurred. Cassia had been reciting a passage of binding to invoke the presence of the deceased Telarian when Marion stopped responding to Cassia's instructions. To her surprise, it was Chisandral who responded.
Sorry. I don't think Mother can hear you anymore.
What makes you say that?
Oh, gods.
The girl breathed.
Actually, it's more like she can hear you, but she's having difficulty joining the sounds into words, or the words into meaning.
Are you just guessing this?
I don't know,
The girl said, as her brow tightened above the cloth of her blindfold.
It's like I can feel her, like being in her head, or she's in mine. Does it make a difference?
Cassia couldn't decide which was more disturbing. The fact Marion was losing normal function, as they'd feared, or the fact it could be sensed through Chisandral's bond. At this point, however, the woman lifted her chin and asked,
So what now?
Blinking in surprise, Cassia asked,
Marion?
No,
said the woman.
I told you, she can't hear.
Cassia's heart skipped a beat.
Chess?
She asked with measured trepidation.
Yes?
Responded Marion, seemingly oblivious anything was out of the ordinary. With the blindfold on, she hadn't noticed the change in her own voice. Right then, however, the ceremony was nearing a critical juncture, and this interruption had gone too long already. Still, Cassia thought it best to perform a quick experiment.
Chess? Can I have you raise your left arm for me?
Like this?
Asked the girl, speaking through Marion's lips and raising Marion's hand. Valerial's eyes widened in shock as she studied the girl beside her, who hadn't moved a muscle.
Good,
Continued Cassia, realizing she could still use this development.
Here, take my hand. I need you 3 steps forward.
The woman was momentarily confused about where she was, but she took a deep breath and accepted Cassia's assistance.
Elle, get the box. You need to crush the bones into a fine powder. Do it now.
But what about Mother?
asked Marion, as Illyriel scrambled to obey.
Shouldn't we be...
Chess, right now I need you to focus.
But what if she...
If you want to help Mother, we must keep moving. Everything will be fine, but I need you to get through this. Can you do that for me?
A few tears dampened the cloth of Marion's blindfold. Her lips trembled before she gave a sudden, vigorous nod.
Good girl. Now turn. Face me.
With the statue of Talarian directly behind Cassia, the woman turned to stand beneath the gaze of her god. As Cassia resumed summoning Talarian, the firelight from the scattered sconces wavered all at once, though no discernible breeze passed through the cavern. Her sister looked up in fear, but never stopped grinding the bones. Moments later, the final words were spoken, and the firelight went still. For Cassia, nothing had changed, except maybe the room was a bit darker than before. Or was that just her imagination?
Chess?
She asked gingerly.
Without removing the blindfold, open your eyes.
The girl didn't respond.
Listen to me, Chess. I know you're afraid, but...
Marion shook her head. Her face squeezed into an expression of agony, and her hands trembled.
No, I can't. Bloody heavens. I can hear him.
That's good,
exclaimed Cassia, feeling a flood of relief. Despite the unexpected turns, they were still on track. And, for the first time, she believed their plan might work.
Now listen. Chess, you need to open your eyes.
He's having difficulty breathing. His voice is all raspy.
That's okay. It's Talarian, remember?
She continued with more confidence than she felt.
I know, but...
Now, Chess.
Marion lifted her chin and straightened her back, and began to scream.
You're okay,
said Cassia, trying to calm her. But the woman panicked, stumbled backward.
Stay in the circle!
Illyriel dropped the box. She got behind the lady before she crossed the line.
It's all right.
Said Illyriel, holding her in place.
Breathe.
The woman, however, was far from convinced, and as Illyriel held onto her, Marion pushed back with her feet with the strength of an adult.
Kay!
Shouted Illyriel.
I don't want to do this,
shouted the woman.
I don't want to do this.
Cassia felt something in her heart break.
Let go of me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You can!
Insisted Illyriel.
You have to!
And to everyone's surprise, Marion went still. It happened so quickly, Cassia didn't believe for a second the girl had conquered her fears. This was something else. The woman's muscles had gone rigid, paralyzed with terror. She wasn't even looking at Talarian. Instead, with her blindfold on, her gaze went further, beyond the plateau. Her neck jerked back and forth, as though trying to look in all directions at once.
What is it?
Asked Illyriel. Her breathing was ragged, making the words difficult to understand.
Standing up, all of them?
Cassia felt a chill. She followed the girl's gaze, but saw nothing different in the surrounding cavern. just the same bones as before.
They're looking right at me,
Continued the girl.
they're warning me of.
Cassia tried to ignore this, pushing to the end.
Don't look at them.
She said.
You're scared. They're not going to harm us.
But she'd spoken too soon.
Get!
The girl was hyperventilating.
But.
Marion jerked backward again as her eyes locked on the top of the ramp. She tried to say something else, but her voice died away, as though she couldn't quite get out the words.
Or,
thought Cassia, with a deepening sense of dread.
the sound is being blocked.
Cassia stopped breathing as her eyes locked onto that dark, empty space. It was difficult to make out clearly, but it was almost as though a crossbow bolt were hovering in midair.
Damn it all.
She thought.
It can't be.
As the bolt rose higher, it was soon accompanied by an entire spear. Cassia's spear, lodged deep in its invisible hide. Somehow, the creature hadn't only come back, it had managed to find her. It had tracked her all the way down here, motivated, no doubt, by thoughts of revenge. The timing couldn't have been worse. Her mind raced for a way to deal with this intruder, and she hoped with all her heart it hadn't brought friends.
Stay behind me,
she told Marion and Illyriel, as she dropped into a crouch and moved a hand to her knives, only to change her mind a second later. Her eyes locked onto her spear as it came closer. She bent her knees, not tensing, but preparing to spring. In the briefest of moments, Cassia noticed the spear dip slightly lower than its previous steps, and both she and the creature jumped at the same time. Illyriel screamed, as though from far away. With all her strength, Cassia dove at a diagonal, evading the attack while stretching for the weapon. The shaft came faster than her hands could move. The wood slipped between her arms, striking hard across her chest. Her legs were twisted out from under her, continuing forward while the rest of her tumbled back. As the world turned over, she locked her arms, clutching the pole to her body. Her added weight dragged the creature down, causing it to swerve. It slammed through an iron sconce, scattering embers and sparks. Still latched onto the spear, Cassia tried to stand, only to have something, a leg perhaps, slam hard into her chest. After being embedded for so long, her weapon finally pried free, and she landed heavily on her back. At this point, she would have almost preferred the spear not to come free, so she'd at least have a way to maintain some control.
Come on!
She yelled as she regained her stance. This shout, of course, wasn't audible for her, but that didn't mean the creature wouldn't listen.
I'm right here. I'm the one you want.
Cassia didn't wait, unwilling to risk its attention on the girls, and she thrust with her spear. Right then, their best chance was to keep it distracted, so the ritual could proceed. Luckily, the creature was more than willing to accept her challenge. As it pounced, she dove to the side, swinging her tip in a wide arc. The strike wasn't as effective as wielding a halberd, but it still made contact, and gave a fleeting indication of the creature's direction. As it recovered its momentum, Cassia pointed at the bones, then thrust that same finger at Marion. Without time to confirm her sister understood, she re-engaged the enemy. Rather than thrust, she opted to keep swinging. With hands near the bottom of the shaft, she created wide sweeping circles that weren't so much intended to inflict damage as to drive the creature back. Her entire strategy was to maintain the offensive in the hopes of preventing a counterattack. And while she knew she couldn't possibly maintain this exertion, she could only hope maybe Marion would ascend and come to her aid. In the next moment, the creature disengaged and pulled to one side. Cassia followed, fully expecting a feint, that it would renew its attack from a different direction. In truth, however, it was chasing something else. Cassia turned and found that Marion was missing. Illyriel stood alone in the circle, box in hand, and horror on her face. Had they finished already? But that wasn't it. The woman had removed her blindfold and was running away. Her escape was pitiful, not quickened by unnatural strength or with the aid of the gods. It was the run of a frightened girl, taking advantage of the creature's distraction to find a place to hide. And just like that, in a single gut-wrenching instant, the ceremony failed. Cassia wanted to scream. And while she knew it wasn't Marion herself who'd lost control, but a 12-year-old girl, this did nothing to quell her fury and frustration. What were they supposed to do now? With the creature no longer fighting Cassia, the girl's run became frantic and desperate. After 3 steps, her feet slipped and sent her sprawling on hands and knees. Cassia knew she'd never reach her in time, but she started forward anyway. Their plan might have failed, but she wouldn't give up, not while her sister lived. She rushed at the creature, determined to drive it off Marion toward the edge. But the creature was too fast. It didn't simply tackle the other woman. In a single movement, it tore her head clean off her shoulders. In shock, Cassia nearly lost her step, but managed to, instead, add her rage and despair into the strength of her charge. Her spear slammed into the beast, and she felt the satisfying snap of bone. It tumbled to the ground and sent Marion's head flying through the air. Ignoring the shower of blood, Cassia screamed soundlessly as she continued forward and pinned the creature against Shaelis's statue. It flailed, striking Cassia's arm and sent her stumbling sideways. She recovered, ignoring the pain, and the gouges ripped through her armor, and she came at the beast again. It deflected her next 2 attacks. By sheer luck, she avoided getting clawed a second time. Her next attack plunged deep into something soft, and she exulted in the hope she'd struck something vital. Indeed, in the following moments, some sound returned. The creature continued to thrash, showing no signs of giving up, but it seemed momentarily weakened. Enough she could hear Illyriel's shout. But Cassia couldn't turn, not just yet. Feeling the creature's location, she centered her thrust and pushed it back against the statue. This didn't provide much of an opening, perhaps less than a second, but Cassia turned her head to see what was happening. Her sister was still inside the circle, not under attack, or in discernible danger. Except Illyriel had removed her shoes and cast aside her dress. Instead, she stood in the silken slip that had once been Chisandrel's, and she'd hastily painted with her own blood what marks she could remember on her face and shoulders.
No!
Screamed Cassia as she thrust again with her spear, pinning the creature in place. But when she turned back, she could only watch as her sister took her place in the circle, brought the box to her lips, and choked down its contents. The Nightmare Throne by Austen Lynn Clarke releases September 27th everywhere books are sold. You can pre-order it right now on Amazon in standard hardcover, paperback, ebook, as well as the audiobook you've already started listening to. The printed version features 50 illustrations produced by the author himself, including chapter headers, full-page artwork, and a double-page map in black and white. Furthermore, from right now until September 27th, a special deluxe full-color edition is available for purchase on Kickstarter. This includes the same 50 illustrations printed in color, as well as a dust jacket, custom end papers, sprayed edges, and alternate artwork printed along the case laminate, featuring both sisters on opposite sides. This version will be signed and numbered by the author in the order of Kickstarter backer number. That way, people who pledge earlier will receive a lower and more collectible number. Just search for The Nightmare Throne by Austen Lynn Clarke, or check the show notes of this podcast for the relevant links.